Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Um,
Joe, Willow Grove is probably, that's probably, Cynthia and Mark Jones.
oh,
They
there,
live on Willow Grove.
oh,
It's a median garden.
oh, yeah, they just saw that post. They did a wonderful job.
And it all started with an excess of irises that we pulled up at the bathhouse. And I couldn't give them away. And at the time, Mark was over the Master Gardener projects. So I just gave him black bags full of irises and he planted them out there.
Midway and Crestline.
Okay.
Yeah. And then other people that lived there started putting plants in there. Now they've got a gorgeous
Mid,
little park.
median,
Yeah. Why?
yeah, cool. Thank you, Mark. You introduce our speaker?
Okay, I have a confession to make. I was going to ask Ellen what I should say to introduce her, and we got talking about master naturalists and then the New York Marathon, and I didn't ask her any questions. But Ellen, how do you pronounce your last name? Sokolovic. I know her through Master Gardeners, and she lives down in Corsicana, but she joined the Dallas chapter because she wanted to do more speaking. And I've heard some of her talks. I have not heard this talk, but I was helping Cindy find a speaker for this month, and I was looking at who other chapters had, and I couldn't find who they've had in the past. I could only find what was coming up, and I saw Ellen's name for this talk. So I thought, well, I'll give her a call. You know, it's like I know her. I can ask her, and she said yes. But she's a master gardener, big on pollination and butterflies, like all the stuff that I love and Nancy loves, and all a part of our little group on that. And she's come from Corsicana, and so I hope you welcome her. And I hope you'll tell us a little more about your background because I failed to do my job.
Thank you all so much for inviting me. I'm so excited to be here and share this with you. Um, Obviously, I am a master gardener. Just a little bit about my past, really fast. 20 years ago, we moved to Houston, and I've always wanted a butterfly garden. So we moved to Houston, and in my backyard, I put a little butterfly up on the fence and planted a few things, and I said, voila, there's my butterfly garden. It didn't exactly work out the way I planned. So we moved to Corsicana 11, 12 years ago. And I said, okay, now's the time. I want a butterfly garden. So I joined Master Gardeners in 2018 and I became a Master Gardener in 2019. And last year, I took the native plant landscaping course and I now have a formal butterfly garden. I have 4 different gardens in my backyard, and one of them is literally a butterfly garden. And then I just bought some bulbs for over here, and they're growing. And down in this one over here, I have some astilbe. And the center is the first time I'm doing a vegetable garden, but I'm going to have to nix that. It doesn't get enough sun. I just don't have the sun for a vegetable garden. So that's okay. My thing is flowers anyway. So I gave it a try. I feel like, as a master gardener, I should at least try more things. So I am a master gardener, and let's see. There we go. Our mission is to educate the public regarding best horticulture practices. And so I took the course last year. And since I live in Corsicana, I got asked by some local organizations, would I give a talk on native plants? And I said, sure, I can do this. I know what a native plant is, da, da, da. But I thought, where did our native plants begin? And the formal definition is before the European expansion. And I got to thinking, okay, Native Indians, wait a minute, there were plants before then. I was really curious. Where did they actually start? How do we get our native plants? And it goes back really far. So, and I do still need my notes, so forgive me, but it's going to be okay. Okay, so way back when, this is where the earth is. See if this works. Oops, wrong one. Which one is the pointer? There we go. Way back here is where our earth is forming, and we have volcanoes, and we have asteroids hitting, and we have comets hitting, and it's forming, and there's no oxygen at all. So just real quick, an asteroid is what hits us. A comet is made of ice, and a meteor is a shooting star that you see in the sky. And you all knew that, right? Good. I just learned it myself too. I literally just the other day, because I was like, wait a minute, I thought it was a meteor that hit us, but it's actually an asteroid. So there's no oxygen at all, and these comets are hitting Earth, and scientists think that is what started the oxygen. Well, the comets hit, melted, there's water, so we are getting oxygen in the oceans. That's it. It's just in the oceans. All right. So we had. Can you see? I'm sorry. I've got to learn this real quick. Right in here is called the Precambrian, or this is the Precambrian right here. This is called the Panotia. Guess how I remember that word. And then right in here is called the Proterozoic. In there, I can't see it. The Proterozoic. And we had one large landmass. That was the one that was called Panotia. I got to point to you. Sorry, guys. I've got a learning curve here, and this is supposed to be moving, but it's not. There we go. Okay. So it broke up, and it created Pangea. But the bottom part, Gondwana, was called the supercontinent. So when I say the supercontinent, I'm talking about this lower part, Gondwana. Laurentia evolved and drifted and kind of broke apart. And you'll also notice that Gondwana looks like South Africa and South America, because it is. Okay, so down here is where Earth is starting, okay? This is where Earth is starting. Earth is still forming, and there are 3 geological eras right here, and that's what we're going to study today. That's what you're going to learn about in plants. So we are going to start down here in the Ordovician, and we're also going to start using this map because it's a whole lot easier to see. Yay. Okay, we have one big landmass moving around, Gondwana. The oceans are forming. Aquatic life is the first to form, plants and fish-like, using what little oxygen that's within the water. Along the edges of the water, groups of algae are evolving. Algae is formed from a microscopic bacteria called cyanobacteria. It is not a plant. It lives in all types of water bodies. Cyanobacteria, along with the chlorophyll, the pigment that makes photosynthesis possible, gives plants its green color. Its common name is blue-green algae. That's the same algae from way back when. And of course, you know, photosynthesis is the foundation of life, forming the base of most food webs. So forgive me. I know you know a lot of this, but sometimes I'm not teaching master gardeners or master naturalists. So asteroids are bombarding the Earth, which have brought fungus. Volcanic islands are being made, revealing bare rock where fungus is growing. The algae splashes up onto the rock where the fungus is, and they combine and they make lichen. That is our first terrestrial plant. That is the first plant, the first symbiotic relationship between organisms. And over the years, the lichen broke down the rock that they lived on. So fungus plus algae equals lichen. The fungus part of the lichen provides the physical protective attributes and the nutrients for the fungus and the algae cells. The algae harvest the light, photosynthesis, and carbon dioxide to make sugars that provide the energy. Lichens have powerful acids which dissolve and digest rock and physically break up the surface by the force of their growth. Thus, when lichens die, they decompose, and this is the creation of our first soil. Okay, there we go. So the Ordovician era ended with the first of the 5 major mass extinctions. We had 5 major ones. The supercontinent, Gondwana, drifted to the South Pole, which initiated an ice age. This freeze lowered the levels of the ocean and reduced the already low levels of oxygen to almost nothing. It also caused global cooling. Keep in mind the volcanoes are still erupting. So the glaciers started melting and the oceans were rising and heating up. The volcanic gases were producing hydrogen sulfide gas and creating a toxic environment in the ocean. Think about Old Faithful in Yellowstone. This is what our oceans looked like. This ice age killed 85% of the marine population, and the ice age only lasted a little over 1 million years. So let's move on to the Silurian period, which is 50 million years later. We are going to skip some of these, by the way. So it's now much warmer, glaciers are melting, seas are rising, mountains are rising, and Gondwana is in the South Pole, now along with 6 other continents in the equator and middle latitudes. So we have our first non-vascular mosses that are starting to grow. A non-vascular moss belongs in the group of plant that lacks vascular tissues. They don't do the xylem and phloem. They reproduce via spores instead of seeds, and they're called true mosses. Mosses typically grow in moist, shaded environments and can thrive in various habitats. Mosses play a crucial role in ecosystems by helping to retain the moisture and prevent soil erosion. And the early insects are living within this moss. Now we have spider-like and millipede-like. That was the only definition I could find, spider-like and millipede-like on insects. So we also had Cooksonia. Cooksonia evolved from the soil made from the lichen. Now think about it. It's a mushroom, right? Fungus is a mushroom, so it produces Cooksonia, which is a mushroom. It didn't have roots, but grew from fungal rhizomes. They sent out shoots from nodes and ran horizontally underground. Fungus produced these skinny mushrooms to propagate by dispersing spores into the wind, but they went extinct quickly due to environmental changes and competition with other plants. It just really wasn't very strong, but it was our first vascular tissue. It had primitive xylem and phloem. So why is fungus so important? Do you guys know? Honestly, do you know? I thought you would. Okay. Because it gives rise to all recognized life on land. Fungi acquire their energy in a liquid form as plant sugars through photosynthesis. This is siphoned directly from actively growing roots. Mycorrhizal fungi cannot obtain energy any other way. One tip of the fungus enters the plant root, and the other tips explore the soil matrix. Fungi transfers organic nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, the NPK, and also other essential elements. The absorption rate is approximately 100 times more efficient, and fungi move with the soil much faster than the plant roots. So it goes fast. To this day, new ecosystems on land are founded by fungi. So no plant grown under natural conditions has been found without fungi. Plants made it out of the water only 500 million years ago because of their collaboration with fungi. This has served as the root system for tens of millions of years until plants could evolve on their own. Today, more than 90% of plants depend on mycorrhizal fungi, which also link trees in shared networks. By the way, is there anybody here that's going to be watching that webinar for the Well Garden Mind? Did anybody sign up for that? I think it's up in Plano. It's a webinar on the Well Garden Mind, and she talks about, I read this book, and she talks about why gardening is so good for us, but it gets into the brain and how the brain looks like a tree, and it has all of those neurotransmitters and the synapses. It looks just like fungus. It looks just the same. Really interesting. So these are some of the plants that do not respond to mycorrhizal fungus. So they're evolving. They absorb it directly from the soil to the roots, and they can utilize stored energy reserves during the early growth stage. And this is why soil quality and moisture is so important, because the better the quality, the better. I mean, you already know that, but some of them don't even use the fungus, so they really need good soil. Okay, Devonian. This is an explosive era, the era of fishes. It's 20 million years later. And during this era, we had our first tree-like forests consisting of brotactites. This was the best picture I could find of them. There aren't very many pictures of these. So they could grow up to 26 feet high, and nothing else grew to this height. These giant mushrooms were the largest living structures on dry land and dominated the landscape for at least 40 million years. So Saturday, on the internet, scrolling, prototaxite fossils are structurally and chemically distinct from extinct and extant fungus. But what they're saying is they aren't really sure if that's what they are. But I just happened to read this on Saturday. Isn't that amazing? I mean, you don't think that people are still studying these things, but they are. Okay, so we had our first amphibians, 4 legs. They're transitioning from the water to the earth. We had our first vertebrates, sharks and rays. We had our first arthropods, millipedes, centipedes, shrimp, crabs, winged insects, spiders, and scorpions. Ferns also started during this era. Ferns produce spores rather than seeds and were one of the first plants to develop a vascular tissue, xylem and phloem. So at the end of this era, we developed the first gymnosperms, or perennial woody plants with exposed seeds. These are the first seed-producing plants. The early conifers were pines, cypresses, sago palms, and ginkgos. 65% of the gymnosperms are dioecious, meaning they have a separate male and female plant, 2 different plants. And then there's other monoecious that have the male and the female present on the same plant. I know that you know that. They do not produce fruit or flowers and use wind as their primary method of propagation. So the Devonian era was the period when plants first developed deep root systems and spread across continents in large numbers. By the late Devonian, the land had been colonized by plants and insects. The oceans now have massive coral reefs developing. Gondwana and Laurentia were beginning to converge again. Remember, they separated, and they're converging again, and now they're definitely in the Pangaea era. And the Devonian period ended with one of the 5 major mass extinctions, and up to 75% of all species were lost. Multiple environment disruptions happened over millions of years. The sea levels were rising triggering global cooling. Worldwide sea and land volcanoes are erupting, and we had the impact of asteroids and comets bombarding the Earth. So this is all happening again. The lack of oxygen, which prohibits decay, allowed the preservation of organic matter. This period's immense plant growth laid down the organic matter that would become our major energy resources. Much of the coal, oil, and natural gas we use today were formed from the remains of the Devonian plants and marine organisms. Okay, we're going to skip the Carboniferous era. It's right below that. It only lasted 60 million years, and it was a time of transition. So now, the Carboniferous was known for the extensive formation of coal due to the lush, swampy forest. We saw the rise of amphibians and first reptiles. Insects flourished, with some species growing to large sizes, including dragonflies, with wingspans of over 2 feet. Early mammals like a shrew were roaming, and the climate was generally warm and humid, promoting diverse plant and animal life. This is the Permian. Okay, it's 120 million years after the Devonian into the Permian, and plants are now covering the earth, and the oxygen level is rising. We have ferns, conifers, palm trees, sago palms, ginkgos, and lepidodendrons. They grew as large tree-like plants, sometimes reaching heights of 160 feet. They are a club moss. It formed some of the first swamps on Earth. These trees grew to over 100 feet and over 5 feet in diameter, like large oak trees. And they were constructed with small amounts of wood and large amounts of bark, which made them less stable and prone to fall. This created large quantities of plant debris on the swamp floor, which accumulated and was compressed over many years, and the biomass became the coal that we use as fuels today. So this ended in mass extinction. We lost 90 to 96% of marine species and 70% of vertebrate species. And this is the largest mass extinction in Earth's history, and this is known as the Great Dying. It was likely caused by massive volcanic eruptions in the Siberian Trap. So this happened a lot in Russia, leading to climate change. This also started the breakup of the Pangaea supercontinent, resulted in ocean acidification and anoxia, severely impacting marine life. And it took millions of years for ecosystems to recover and diversify after this event. It was major. So now we have the Triassic period. So my husband kept calling this a pterodactyl, but it's called a pterosaur, this giant bird, and it was like a small airplane. They were so big. So the Triassic marked a period of significant recovery and reestablishment for plant life. The dominant groups like conifers, cycads, and ginkgos still persisted and diversified. We were now forming extensive forests, especially in the northern hemisphere. Temperatures were generally warmer, and this unique climate and geographic setting shaped the types of plants that would successfully colonize and thrive across the recovering landscapes. Triassic plants served as a primary producer, forming the base of the terrestrial food web for evolving animal life, including early dinosaurs. Evolutionary developments in Triassic plants laid groundwork for the future diversification of plant life on Earth. Okay. Okay. So during the Triassic era, all major land masses were combined into the supercontinent Pangaea. Toward the end of the Triassic, Pangaea began to rip apart, again, leading to the separation, again, of Laurentia and Gondwana. So massive volcanic activity ripped them apart. So you can see, I mean, it just ripped it. As Pangaea began to rip apart, immense volumes of lava, along with gases like carbon dioxide and sulfur, were spewed into the atmosphere, resulting in rapid global warming and acidified the ocean again. This caused another mass extinction. We lost many large amphibians and non-dinosaur reptiles. However, many dinosaurs, the pterosaur, and mammals were left largely untouched and became the dominant land animal for the next 135 million years. So this is when the dinosaurs were starting to take over. Jurassic. Okay. It's only 50 million years after the Triassic, and plants are prolific, covering the earth, but still no grass. Ferns are covering the ground, producing oxygen. Ferns changed the world. Paleobotanists believe this played a crucial role in cooling the planet, and some researchers are looking into whether they can do that again. They produce so much oxygen. So the Jurassic period was pivotal for insect evolution. Prehistoric insects were giants, and this is when the first parasitoid wasp appeared during this time, marking a significant evolutionary development. This is when our first birds appeared and our first sequoias. Okay, we're now up to the Cretaceous, but the end of the Jurassic period wasn't due to any single catastrophic event, but complex factors, basically climate change and volcanic activity, evolving ecosystems, geological upheavals, but the Jurassic shaped the world that we know today. So this transition marks not an abrupt end, but a gradual transition to a new chapter in Earth's history. So now we're at the Cretaceous. Okay. Again, it's only 57 years, not millions of years, years. Jurassic has ended. Gradual. Now we're getting into the Cretaceous period. It's only 50 years. Okay. The carbon dioxide level is still high, but angiosperms evolved and are represented by our flowers and fruit-bearing plants. Angiosperms include all forbs, grasses, broadleaf trees, shrubs, vines, and most aquatic plants. They developed a specialized enhanced photosynthesis system for transporting water nutrients using xylem and phloem. They became more efficient using and taking in CO2 within their leaves. They have fewer stomata, or tiny pores on their leaves, so they could absorb more CO2 with less water loss. With the still high level of CO2 in the atmosphere and more oxygen being released into the atmosphere, many plants grew faster and larger. It was a time of immense botanical transformation. This is one of the most prolific and beautiful eras in Earth's time. There was no buildings. There were no buildings, no roads, no people. This is the time our coevolution began between plants and insects. And this period lasted about 79 million years. To recap, fungus combined with algae to make lichen, which created our first soil. We got mosses, non-vascular, which absorb water and nutrients directly through their surface. We got our first vascular plants. The Cooksonean, or the mushroom, grew from the fungi, and then the Cooksonean pollinates with spores, which grew from the soil the lichen made. We got our prototaxites, the large mushrooms, that dominated for the earth for 40 million years. We got ferns starting to cover the earth, creating more oxygen. We now have gymnosperms, or conifers, which were our first perennial woody plants with exposed seeds, and the lepidodendron, which is the tall tree that was unstable and fell, creating the coal that we use as fossils today. And now we're going to learn about angiosperms, flowers and fruits. That's our current ecosystem. And so do you all remember learning about angiosperms? Are there very many master gardeners in the group? You? Do you remember learning about angiosperms?
Of course, I remember everything I learned.
It's on. I'm usually doing this for the master gardeners, and they're like, "No, I don't remember." It's on the first page, first paragraph of the master gardener manual. So, during the Cretaceous period, angiosperms evolved and are distinguished from the other major seed plants by producing fruit and having flowers. Angiosperms not only have an improved vascular system with the xylem and phloem, but they also produce seeds and fruit to pollinate. There are two types of angiosperm. There's a dicot cotyledon, which is the first seedling that has two leaves and a ringed vascular system, or a monocot cotyledon, which is a single leaf with a scattered vascular system. Seeds have enabled flowering plants to spread to different climate conditions. Although ferns are also considered vascular plants and they have xylem and phloem, the specific arrangement and structure of the fern tissues differ from angiosperms. Another difference is ferns pollinate using spores and not seeds. Therefore, ferns have an advantage over angiosperms because they can survive with less light. Plus, ferns have been around a lot longer. Okay, so here we are, still in the late Cretaceous. Plant communities are shaping the era's ecosystems. We have lush forests of conifers, cycads, ferns, and flowering plants provide habitats and food for terrestrial life. Forests resemble modern ones with oaks, hickories, and magnolias. These communities form complex food webs supporting large herbivores, dinosaurs. Rainforests are starting to grow. The earth is flourishing with newly evolved angiosperms, and our current ecosystem has begun. The oxygen level is rising. This was paradise on Earth. It really was. The Chicxulub asteroid ended the late Cretaceous era, and it's located near the town of Chicxulub in Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. The asteroid itself was approximately 9 miles wide. The impact created a crater over 93 miles wide, which is approximately the distance between Dallas and Fort Worth. All land animals over 55 pounds were wiped out. The impact ignited wildfires that spread across the globe, and massive tsunamis spread across the oceans. The impact vaporized rock, sending a plume of superheated material into the atmosphere. It released so much dust, debris, and smoke into the atmosphere, it blocked the sun. No sun, no photosynthesis. The energy released was equivalent to billions of atomic bombs. Remember, there's no buildings, there's no roads, there's nothing to stop this fire. And when it hit, it created a massive fire explosion, and it just, it just went across the land. I just did something wrong. It was a big explosion, but the fires, it was massive. Okay, so the resulting nuclear winter impact led to a significant drop in temperatures. However, it was a short-term cooling effect. It wasn't a full-on ice age. The asteroid did not permanently reshape the Earth's global form, but it did create a large depression, which caused significant geological and environmental changes. Okay. The asteroid ended the Cretaceous. It took tens of thousands of years to return to equilibrium. And we're going to skip this Palestine area. It was just a time of recovery. I mean, it took tens of millions of years to recover from the Cretaceous. So now we are in our current era, the Cenozoic, and we're going to start with the Eocene. We now have large herbivores, like early ancestors of elephants and horses. We have predators, early carnivores, that would eventually give rise to cats, dogs, and bears. We have flying mammals, like bats. We have aquatic mammals and birds. Birds diversified into many new species and body forms, and they evolved specialized beaks for different diets, developed a wide range of flight styles and non-flight adaptations. So the recovery of plant communities was crucial for the rebound of animal life. And evidence suggests that ferns were among the first plants to recolonize many areas, and followed by a gradual return of more complex plant species. So we're still in the Eocene epoch. This was 56 million years ago, and angiosperms became the dominant plant group. And this was one of the hottest times on the planet. Some of the angiosperm seeds survived the climate change, and the photosynthetic organisms slowly reestablished themselves, providing our foundation. So basically, the angiosperm seeds, they went deep and they didn't necessarily die. So that's how they survived the asteroid. This is when our native plants began, right here. The composition of forests and oceans shifted, and the distribution of animal life across the planet was significantly altered. So after the asteroid hit, the planet shifted and the animals and plants were dispersed. Think about now and how our shipping industry has altered the distribution of plants and animals upon our planet. Well, that's kind of what happened. They got dispersed. The planet was breaking up, and so that's how we got our different plants and animals on different parts of the earth. But we're doing it again now with our shipping system. So angiosperms are here now. We have roughly 290,000 species of them. They are flowering and fruit. They are efficient water use, adaptations to extreme environments, and they have complex plant and pollinator relationships. So this explains during the Cretaceous period, the angiosperm dominated and they flourished worldwide. They adapted to the climate and soil, and the seeds of the angiosperm survived the ice ages and meteors. I need to change that to asteroids. So angiosperms. Our current agriculture is almost entirely dependent on angiosperms. They consist of nearly all our plant-based food and livestock feed, all grasses such as rice, maize, and wheat, and provide half of the world's stable calorie intake. We get wood, paper, cotton, sugar, medicine, pharmaceuticals, and also decorative and cultural purpose plants. Think of the meaning behind roses and lilies. These are all angiosperms. Which brings us to our current timeline. We live in the ecoregion called the Texas Blackline period. And I'm not even going to go through this. All I'm going to say is this is considered some of the richest soil in the world. Did you know that? And it's from the Cretaceous era. All of this Blackline prairie is from the Cretaceous. The marine chalks, limestone, and shale, which give us our characteristic black, heavy clay soil, which is considered some of the richest soil in the world, which I would not consider clay to be, but it is. Okay, so our plant's heating up again, and we can see what's happening by 2100, which is only about 75 years from now. Many of the plant species may be extinct. So let's come out of our doom and gloom and see how we can save the planet. This chart shows the late Cretaceous era. It's getting dark in here. Just before the asteroid hit. This is just before the asteroid hit, and it's getting warmer. It's much warmer than it is now, and the CO2 is higher. But you want to think about that the plants were flourishing. And it's a lot, thank you. It's a lot warmer. So we have a ways to go, just to let you know that. And this I'm not even going to go over. But all life depends on plants. Native plants are the foundation of our biosphere. They provide year-round food for wildlife. And insects play an important role in pollinating these plants and are the base of the food web for many wildlife. 96% of birds rely on insects for their young. caterpillars and seeds. And some insects are completely dependent on native plants. So you want to think of monarchs and milkweeds. Plant ferns. Another way to help save the planet is plant ferns. Ferns adapt to a wide range of environments, from tropical rainforests to arid regions. Their evolutionary history is intertwined with the changing earth and the diversification of other plant groups. They have a symbiotic relationship with the cyanobacteria feeding it sugars, and in return, they give us oxygen. And researchers are looking into that to see if they can help cool our planet again. One last thing I will leave with you. Scientists know that fungi stay connected with the environment and the organisms around them using a kind of internet communication. This is known as the Wood Wide Web. By deciphering the language fungus use to send their signals through this biological network, scientists might be able to get insights about the state of the underground ecosystems, but it also taps into them to improve our own information system. So back to the brain, we're all interconnected. So scientists in the UK already have a lab set up to do some experiments with mushrooms, and they've actually reported spiking activity. So they've I don't know how or what, but they've hooked them up and they are able to get a spike. So if we can learn how, think of how effective fungus is in communicating with plants and how we might be able to communicate with those plants. So I leave this on there. This was the late Cretaceous, and this is our planet now. These are my references. You can see down here on the bottom, this is the bottom is the Well Garden Mine by Sue Stewart Smith, and she is going to be doing a webinar on Wednesday. So, voila, I am done, but I will leave one with you here because I have so many questions. This is, we ended here in the Eocene. So I went ahead and did however, these next few are. So in case you were curious. So, any questions?
You were saying, if you go back to the slide with the two maps of the lake crustaceans and current, you were saying that
This?
right. You were saying that the crustacean period is when we got the native plants. So do we define the native plants as the ones that we can record back to that era, or is it?
They did start in the Cretaceous era. But then the asteroid hit, and so they evolved again in that Eocene era. They had to evolve again, and that's when the land masses were separate, and that's where we get our native plants. So the angiosperms started growing in the Cretaceous, but our native plants started in the Eocene because it was separate. And that's why the native plants started growing. They are angiosperms, but they started growing in those different land masses, and they may have been different plants in different land masses. Does that make sense?
And that's how we're able to define them, is we can be able to record that they were part of the crustacean period here. How do we distinguish what is a native and what isn't?
Well, so it was all one landmass in the Cretaceous. Go back. Okay, Cretaceous. Here we go. We started getting angiosperms in the Cretaceous. All right, that is actually when we started getting angiosperms. Okay, so then the asteroid hit, and it started breaking our land masses apart, and it started distributing, like, you might have a dinosaur here, but not down here. So the plants that evolved up out of after the Cretaceous into okay, so see right here, this Paleocene, the earth is separating again further and further apart, but the plants that landed up in the Eocene, so the plants that landed here in Texas aren't the same that are in China. That's what makes a native plant. So the plants that are growing here in Dallas are probably pretty similar to Houston, but Houston's a lot warmer and humid, so they might get different swamp type things that we get, because we're drier, and we also have that blackland prairie. So does that answer your question? Do you kind of get it? So you don't want to think of,
Well, like if I were to, I don't want to like press this, but like, so the ones that are here, right, aren't the ones that are in China. If like 150 years ago, one came from China and here, but then like got comfortable with here, how do we define, how do we know?
It's not a long enough period for evolution to take place. Evolution is more on the time scale of like at least 10,000 years. For biological evolution to take place, we're talking like a time scale of like hundreds of thousands.
or millions.
Yeah, and in this case,
And we can tell.
in terms of epochs, like how we define geologic periods of time, epochs are measured out in millions of years. But individual evolution, speciation, species happens on a time scale of like tens to hundreds of thousands of years. So like 150 years, dude, that's an invasive species.
We know what's been here for hundreds of thousands of years and what's been here for.
But fossil records are rough. They don't preserve as well as say like cartilage, bone.
Right.
They don't really preserve. It's very rare to find plant fossils. Only like carbonization and lignin in trees
Right.
is where we get like most of our
Even
plant.
though it's,
Yeah, and like really, we don't know that much about our current paleo record.
okay.
Sorry.
No, that's great. Good. So basically, right.
How did you get PTA?
No.
So what you want to think of is though angiosperms, the flowers started growing in the Cretaceous, right? But then the planet separated, and those angiosperms that continued to grow in Texas, those are our native plants. Yes, sir.
Is there a subset of plants within the ecosystem where species that remain unchanged for long enough that they actually pursue that?
Proceed the Cretaceous? No, because the angiosperms, well, ferns, conifers, pine trees, those go way, way, way back. But as far as the flowers go, no, flowers didn't evolve until the Cretaceous era. So no, the answer is no, they don't go back before then. There are plants, pardon?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, so the flowers didn't start until the Cretaceous.
All the way up to, okay, there's still, yeah.
What else? Did I blow your mind? It's pretty cool stuff. I was asked to do a presentation on native plants, and this is what I came up with.
I really appreciate all the connection.
It's fascinating.
That nice to have it all linked together in a
Mhm.
daisy chain.
Well, I still have to read my notes though. That's a lot of information to remember, and a lot of little tiny details to remember with each slide. And so I appreciate your patience.
One thing that you said at the beginning about the introduction of fungus
Mhm.
was during a time of a lot of asteroids.
Yes.
But the asteroids didn't bring the.
Well, we don't know that. We're about, yeah. Oh, so yes, yes. So it has been proven that it's from an asteroid?
It's theorized that the building blocks collide that occur at the bottom of the ocean at these heat vents, came like carbon-based building blocks came from outer space.
Mhm.
But that all life inevitably came from the ocean. I mean, that's.
Right, right. But where did the fungus come from? Did it come from the ocean? Because it was on top of the earth.
Yes.
And then,
Heated ocean vents.
so then, the algae as well, you know, that's a cyanobacteria, which had the chlorophyll. So I guess that came from the ocean too, but how did that evolve? You know, was that brought, that was brought, they think, from a comet, you know, with the water, because comets are ice. Exactly.
Didn't decompose at all, or wood, it created what was like, you know. Yeah, we found it actually dissolved cells of the way.
Right.
Right, they're still there to the day, yes. People think that the black rock fungus was under the ground and thrown up by the.
Yes, sir.
It might be fairly ancient, so I looked up, I received more horsetails.
Right.
And they originated, and according to AI and Google, they originated 300 million years ago, and they are native.
That would be, so that's that. And then, I thought this one, see, they've got the horsetail up here. That was a Permian. Mhm. No one else?
When did people start coming?
That's with a very, very, a lot longer. It's a very top up here. Hold on. Right there. Holocene, way up there. That's when, well, the first humans, hold on a minute. Miocene. So the first humans started evolving right here. That's the Miocene. This is when we got our first agriculture. So. And the grasslands really helped with the oxygen level, of course. So that's when we started getting a lot of oxygen. Right. You feel like you learned anything today? Good. Good. Thank you. So glad. I usually present this as the evolution of our plants and why native plants are so important. I took that out because I know you know that. And what I decided to do, there were 5 slides of the native plants, and I put in the 5 mass extinctions and explained those instead. So I know that you guys already know about the native plants. So anyway, all right. Well, thank you guys very much. Appreciate it.